everybody. Good morning. I apologize for the delay. We're having some technical difficulties here in studio. We were saying that technology can make our lives a lot easier, but they can also really make our lives a lot harder when it malfunctions. And so anyway, so our apologies for being a little bit late. I see Margaret and Emily are joining us. Welcome. And we have 5 people in studio, so welcome. Many of you were here last week, and welcome back. So for those of you who were not here last week, my name is Julie Tharalson. I am a registered dietitian. I'm with the Agency on Aging, and we are bringing to you a program called Health Smarts. Hopefully those of you who are joining us on phone, online have received the book, the Food Smarts booklet, which is what we're going to be referring to as we go through the class. And last week, those of you who were here, I gave you guys a little bit of homework. Do you remember what it was? Yeah, to take a look at the eatfresh.org website. Did anybody do that?
I did.
Did you? Okay, what did you think?
It's good.
Okay.
I looked at it briefly, got some pretty good information in there.
Okay, okay, so you found some things that were useful for you in there. How about you? Did you?
It was nice. It had some recipes for quick preparation.
Yeah, and yeah. So people here in studio are saying, I don't know, Margaret or Emily, if either of you had a chance to take a look at the website. If not, I'm going to encourage you to please do, because as our folks in here are indicating, there was some good information and some good recipes. And like I said last week when I was talking about that website, it has a lot of really good quick meal information. And for Food Smarts, as we said last week, those of us who don't cook kind of are at the mercy of others cooking for us, whether that's fast food or it's convenience foods or somebody else, right? And if you don't like to cook, that's okay, but we still need to eat. And so one of the nice things about that website and all of the recipes that we're going to be going through during the course of this class are going to be super quick, super healthy, and not terribly expensive, right? Because people over 60 more often than not tend to live on fixed incomes. And so, watching how much money you spend on food is important, right? So anyway, take a look at the website if you haven't already. I think the website address is on page 5 or 6 in your booklet. It's early on. It's just eatfresh.org. All right. So anyway, so if you didn't look last. Oh, and you pulled it up on your phone. Oh, okay, perfect. All right, great. Whatever works. Yeah. This week, we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about food safety. It's a really important topic. And we're starting in the booklet. We're going to be on page 24. So we're in that section. Did you not get a booklet? No. Okay. And I apologize because I don't have an extra one with me. But can you come next week and I will bring one for you? I really apologize. I thought I had extras and I don't. I don't know where they went. So my apologies. But if you want to, do you have one? Do you have a booklet? No? Okay. Do you want to sit with somebody who has a booklet? You can feel free, there's right here, maybe you can share. Okay, if not, that's okay. I'm going to be going over everything, and when you get the booklet, it'll be in here. Okay, all right. We're going to talk about food safety today. And when I talk about food safety, what do you think I'm talking about? What comes to mind when I say food safety?
To me, it's like keep
and watch the dates and stuff on there.
Watch the dates and stuff. It's basically trying to prevent food poisoning. Really? I mean, if any of you have ever had food poisoning, it's unpleasant. There's a lot of gastrointestinal, symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, those kinds of things, nausea, everything's unpleasant. And food poisoning is unpleasant no matter what your age is. But one of the things about being older, an older person, and having food poisoning is that it's much more dangerous for you when you're older. all right? One of the things that happens when you have food poisoning is that you end up losing a lot of water in your body, either through vomiting or through diarrhea, and you're much more likely to become dehydrated as a result, okay? Dehydration is really, really dangerous for people over 60, right? If you get dehydrated and you're an older person, you're much more likely to end up in the hospital being rehydrated, right? And the older you are, the more likely you are to die of food poisoning, right? So when you're younger, it's unpleasant, but you can fight it off. But the older you are, the more dangerous it becomes, right? And the other thing about being older with food poisoning is you're actually more likely to get food poisoning if you're older for a few reasons. First one is your senses may not be as sharp as they were when you were younger, right? So your sense of smell that might indicate if something is spoiled, your sight, so close up it might be more difficult to see food that maybe isn't so good. Sometimes just memory and cognition can be a problem, right? So all of those things can kind of gang up to make it a little more likely that you could develop food poisoning, right? So we're going to talk about a few ways to prevent that from happening. So in the back, you had mentioned looking at expiration dates on your food, right? And that is hugely important, definitely. I want to talk about foods that don't have expiration dates on it. Let's say you made yourself a tuna salad, right? How long do you think you can hang on to something that you made and you put in your refrigerator? How long can you hang on to it before it becomes potentially dangerous? Couple days?
I think 4 days.
4 days? What do you think? You guys kind of agree with that? 4 days or so? 4 days, yeah. Actually, you can keep it up to 7 days and have it be okay. What I would strongly recommend, and this is actually something that they do in restaurants, so they don't serve expired food. What might not be a bad idea is to get like a grease pencil or a piece of masking tape and a pen. And if you made tuna salad or some hard-boiled eggs or something like that, put it in the bowl or whatever, make sure you cover it up. I would write the date, okay? So you can either write the date that you put it in there, or you can count ahead 7 days and put that date on there and then throw it away, right? Try to use it up. So that's gonna do two things. First of all, it may help keep you from getting sick, which is good. But the other thing that it's gonna do is if you see that you've got chicken in your refrigerator and you've got 2 more days on it, you're gonna eat it before you have to throw it away, right? So you don't have that, you pull this chicken out and you're like, how long has this been? I don't know if it's been in here, if it's still safe. I mean, the one rule, when in doubt, throw it out, is always important, right? If you're not sure about something or it doesn't look right, throw it away, because you don't wanna, you don't want to end up sick because you ate something that you shouldn't have. But dating stuff will help you use things up while they're still good and avoid throwing away food. Anytime you throw food in the garbage, you're throwing money away, right? Money that you may not have. So that's really important. So just simply dating something will help a lot, okay? So 7 days. If you want to go less than 7 days, that's up to you. But 7 days is the longest that you'll be able to keep something that you made and have it still be safe. Okay? The other thing is, make sure your refrigerator is at the right temperature. Does anybody have a thermometer in their refrigerator? Yeah, most people don't, right? We have kind of that little gauge that'll help us, turn the temperature, and it'll tell us what the temperature is sometimes. In older models, not so much. I think in older models, a lot of times it has like that, you set it to 40 and it may be 40, it may not be 40, who knows? Something that I would suggest considering is purchasing a thermometer for your refrigerator and your freezer. They are not expensive. You could go to Walmart and get one for $2. They're just the little plastic, and it'll say on their refrigerator, freezer, thermometer, and just put it in there. Usually what I would suggest is put it in the door, because that's the warmest part of the refrigerator. So, it'll give you a reading. In your refrigerator, you always want to make sure that it's 40 degrees or less, okay? Bacteria grows really, really well between the temperatures of 41 degrees and 141 degrees. Okay, so if your food is sitting between 40 and 141 and sitting between 41 and 141, bacteria is going to grow really well. But if your food is 40 degrees or less in your refrigerator, it really keeps it from growing, and that's good. That's something that's going to help prevent foodborne illness. All right, so so that is a suggestion, recommendation. Refrigerator should be -10 or less. I'm sorry, 10 or less. I'm confusing you guys. It should be 10 degrees or less for the freezer. Okay, so -10 falls to that. So let me repeat that. 40 degrees or less for the refrigerator, 10 degrees or less for the freezer. All right. If they're measuring that temperature, that's going to really help prevent bacterial growth. Okay. Do any of you take frozen meats out of the freezer and thaw them out?
I do.
Yeah. Okay. So this is another potential area of danger. You have to be careful how you do this. How do you thaw your meat? What do you do with it?
I take it out the day before, I put it in the refrigerator.
In the refrigerator. Okay. Refrigerator is one of the safe ways to do that, right? So let's say you have ground beef and you pull your ground beef out of the freezer and then you put it in the refrigerator and you let it thaw down. If your refrigerator is at the right temperature, 40 degrees or less, it's thawing out because it's less than freezer temperature, but it's not getting so warm that bacteria is able to grow, okay? So there are really only 3 safe ways to thaw meat, all right? So the first one is the refrigerator method, as we talked about. I'm also going to mention that the bigger the piece of meat or the more solid the piece of meat, it tends to take a little longer to thaw out, right? So I wouldn't do 1 day for a Thanksgiving turkey, right? That's going to take a few more days in the refrigerator. But something like ground beef, because it's already ground up, will thaw out pretty fast. Something a little more solid like chicken breasts or something like that may take maybe 2 days, kind of depending, a day or 2 days. But the bigger it is, or a roast, like if you're thawing out a whole roast, that's probably going to take a couple of days, okay, because it's more solid. So the refrigerator thawing method is one. The other 2, one of them is the microwave. Have any of you ever thawed out in the microwave? So microwave thawing is safe, and most microwaves will have thawing directions on it. So you can do that, and you're going to do that if you're going to cook the meat right away. One of the downsides of microwave cooking is that sometimes it'll sort of cook part of the meat, so you might end up with a little bit of toughness on some of it. But that is an okay method in terms of food safety. That works. And then the final method, if you need to thaw something really fast, is to do it under running water. So if you have, say, fish or beef or whatever, you can actually, in your sink, put the meat in the bowl, and then run water over it. Not hot water. You actually want cool water running over it, because as weird as it sounds, cool water will thaw that meat faster than hot water will, okay? But the thing about that method is you need to change the water very frequently, or leave the water running a little bit on the meat, okay? That, here in California, we're all kind of crazy about water conservation, even with all the rain we've had. Still important to conserve water. So that method can be a little bit wasteful for water, but if you need to thaw something pretty quick, it can work. I personally use that method at home if I am thawing fish, when I cook fish at home, and I'm starting with frozen fish. It works really fast. Or a thinner cut, like a thinner cut chicken breast or something like that, it'll work pretty well. So bowl, meat, cool water, let it run so that the water is flowing out. Because what's happening is the water that you're using to thaw meat has bacteria in it, and you want to flush that bacteria away, and the water will do that. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, what if you just sit it in cold water?
Sit it in the cold water? Okay, so the question is, what if you just sit the meat in the cold water? That can work, but you want to change that water out every half hour at least, right? So if you put it in a bowl of cold water in your sink, don't just leave it there and go about your business and 3 hours later come back to it. Because you need to flush away any bacteria. You don't want to give it a chance to grow, okay? So that water needs to be continually changed, flushed out, drain the bowl out, refill it, at least every half an hour. The worst thing that you can do to thaw meat out is just throw it on the counter and walk away. And I do talk with people sometimes who do that, and that's really, really dangerous. Because as meat thaws, what happens is you might have the outer part of the meat higher than 40 degrees, and bacteria is growing like crazy while the inside is still frozen. So that's really dangerous, so don't do that. So if you're thawing out meat, use one of those 3 methods that is a lot safer, okay? Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is cross-contamination. Does anybody know what that is? Anybody heard the words cross-contamination before? Yeah, I see a few heads nodding. What does it mean? Anybody want to volunteer?
It'd be like if you had raw meat that was contaminated with bacteria and you cut it with a knife and then you
Exactly.
yeah. It'd be like if you had raw meat
There you
and cut it with a knife,
Mm-hmm.
and then you use that knife to cut some raw vegetables.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so basically what it is, it's you're spreading bacteria from one place to another place, right? So the bacteria that is on meats, in particular in eggs, some of it can be what we call pathogenic bacteria. Okay, you guys don't have to remember pathogenic, but what I just want to draw a distinction. I mean, everything's covered in bacteria. Some of it's dangerous, some of it is not. Most of it's not. But pathogenic bacteria is the type of bacteria that causes illness, right? So that's like salmonella and staph, and all of these infections are caused by bacteria, right? So the pathogenic ones are the ones that will make you sick. So there are certain foods where we find higher potential for pathogenic bacteria, and meat, raw meat, is a big one, right? As is eggs. Generally, animal products tend to be much more risky for pathogenic bacteria than plant foods, although plant foods can have problems as well, and we'll talk about that in a second. But cross-contamination is exactly what you were just saying, that you take bacteria from a source that is maybe a little more risky, like raw meat. Let's just say it's chicken in this case. You're chopping up chicken with a knife, and then you decide, oh, I want to have some salad with my chicken, and so you take that same knife and you chop up some salad greens, right? I mean, the danger, obviously, is that you spread bacteria from the chicken over to the salad greens. Now, one of the things that kills bacteria is heat, right? So if you're going to cook that chicken, hopefully you're going to cook chicken before you eat it, but heat kills bacteria. So the bacteria is going to be killed on that chicken, but you're not going to be cooking your salad, right? So you have to think about things that come in contact with foods that are considered ready to eat, meaning that you're not going to cook them, right? So things like raw vegetables, salads, bread, if you're going to eat rolls and things, or tortillas, or just things that you're going to grab and eat. You need to think about, is anything touching this that might be dangerous, right? If I just cracked a bunch of eggs, I don't want to go reaching for bread or a piece of fruit that I'm going to eat, because there could be salmonella bacteria on my hands, right? So I'm going to wash hands, right? That's actually the single most important thing that you can do before you cook or eat is wash your hands. All right, that's kind of sort of elementary, I guess, that most of us would think to do that. But sometimes if we're at home, we're a little more lax about washing our hands than we are if we're out in public. Like if you're going to the restroom and you're in a restaurant, you're probably more likely to wash your hands. At home, well, maybe, maybe not. So think about that a little more often, because one of the best things that you can do is make sure that your hands are clean, right, before you're cooking or before you're eating, okay? And that can also be cross-contamination. You're taking bacteria from somewhere else and you're transferring it to your food, all right? So just be a little bit, so be mindful when you're in the kitchen. I would say if you're touching any kind of food that is an uncooked animal product, it's a good idea to wash your hands before you touch anything else. Okay? Yeah.
I notice on some cooking shows that sometimes you'll see the person crack some eggs.
Right.
And they don't wash their hands before they continue.
Yeah. So the comment was that sometimes you notice people that are on cooking shows not washing their hands when they do something like cracking eggs. Yeah, it's funny. I used to work with a dietitian whose brother-in-law worked with Rachel Ray, and apparently I don't really watch her, but apparently in her cooking show she would do that a lot. She would crack eggs and things like that, and she wouldn't wash her hands. So this dietitian I worked with told her brother-in-law, "Hey, tell Rachel Ray to wash her hands." and actually said, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. And I think it's because when you're doing a cooking show, you're not necessarily thinking about those things. You're thinking about, oh, I've got to make sure I've got, continue going on. That doesn't excuse somebody from not washing their hands, but you're absolutely right. It happens all the time. Yeah. So anyway, but those are things to think about when you're in your own kitchen, is just kind of, so the best things that you can do to control foodborne illness, food poisoning risk in your own kitchen is keep your hands clean. Make sure that your temperatures are good. So refrigerator, freezer when you're thawing, right? Pay attention to the dates on your food, right? One of the things that we have in this book is a listing of, I talked to you about foods that you guys actually make, right? But there's also a listing in this book about how long can you keep certain foods. How long can you keep a jar of mayonnaise? How long can you keep eggs? How long can you keep, canned food, things like that. How long can you keep meat in the freezer? Those are questions people have sometimes. I mean, the expiration date is always good to go by, but there's also a list that will help you understand in terms of danger. One of the things that I want to mention just as an aside is that sometimes some foods aren't necessarily dangerous when they pass their expiration. It's more a food quality issue. Okay, so let's say you have a box of cornflakes that you haven't opened up. Are cornflakes a plant food or an animal food? Yeah, plants. They're made out of corn, right? Okay, so it's a plant food. So it's not an animal food, and I already said that animal foods are more risky than plant foods, okay? So cornflakes, so if you have a box of cornflakes that's a month out of its expiration date, it's still safe to eat because it's not an animal food, but the food quality may not be as good. Okay, so you have to kind of think about that. If you have a can of tuna and it's past its expiration date because it's an animal product, I would probably toss it out to be safe rather than sorry. So that's just the other thing to remember, plant foods versus animal foods, okay? Occasionally you hear things like people were sickened because they ate cantaloupe or because they ate spinach or something like that, which is an animal food. Occasionally you will find that happen, and most commonly the reason for that is because of fecal contamination. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that somehow Usually because somebody didn't wash their hands, right? It could be somebody didn't wash their hands in the field, maybe when they were harvesting after using the bathroom, when they're harvesting the spinach. Sometimes it could mean animal contamination, right? So if there was animal droppings in the field and that got mixed up, poop has a lot of bacteria in it. So a lot of times when you hear something about a recall and it's a vegetable recall, very frequently it's some kind of fecal contamination, right? Actually the USDA puts out food recalls. Most of the time the real serious ones will show up in the news. They'll say, if you bought spinach from this brand or from this store or wherever, throw it out. So always make sure you listen for those. But if you ever just want to know what recalls are, you can just go to any browser and put in USDA food recalls, and it will tell you everything that was recalled that week. Say this might have glass fragments in it. This might be contaminated with a particular type of bacteria or things like that. Okay? But bottom line, when in doubt, throw it out. Always. Okay? All right. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
You're saying if you're cooking eggs and you crack them,
Mm-hmm.
then you should wash your hands
Yeah.
and then run back and finish cooking the eggs?
Yeah, actually,
I've
yeah.
never seen anybody do that.
Right. So the question is, does every time if you're cooking, like say scrambled eggs or something like that, and you're cooking, you're putting them in do I have to wash my hands every time after I crack an egg? Yeah, you should. Actually, if you're really trying to remember, you guys the older you are, the more careful you got to be, right? When you're younger, you're much better at fighting off bacteria and those sorts of things than when you get older. And the older you are, the harder it gets. I mean, we can't really do anything about aging, but it's just harder for your body to. Remember, when you're young and you have a cold and it's not a big deal and you just kind of work through it, and then you're older and you get a cold and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm out for like a week. The older you are, the harder it is for your body to kind of mount a defense to being sick. You don't recover as quickly. So, yeah.
When I wash my hands, I usually put them in the water,
Mm-hmm.
wash them. I don't, for 20 minutes, soap and water.
Soap and water, yeah.
I figure that's pretty good if you put water in there.
You got some water on there. So yeah, so he's saying that he would just kind of rinse his hands with water if he's washing them, right? Okay, so if you're cooking eggs, what I would say is consider getting into a habit, crack all the eggs that you need to crack, and then wash them. Wash your hands with soap and water before you cook the eggs. Because once you cook them, they're going to be in ready-to-eat form, right? They're not going to have any more heat. So if you reintroduce bacteria from the shell, let's say there's salmonella on there, you're kind of setting yourself up. So a couple of things here. Soap, what soap does is bacterial cells have like a membrane on the outside, just like, we have skin, they have a membrane on the outside. When you apply soap to the membrane of bacteria, it disintegrates the membrane and kills the bacteria. Water, if you just put water on it, it just maybe floats away to another part of your hand. Or maybe some of it gets off in the water, but you still may have it. Now, having said that, salmonella contamination on eggs is pretty rare, actually. It's only about 1 in 10,000 eggs that's contaminated with salmonella. So if you haven't gotten sick, it may just be because the odds are kind of long. But the question is, do you want to take that risk? If you know that as an older person, if you are the unlucky person that got that 1 in 10,000 egg that has salmonella on it, and you get that, you may end up in the hospital, right? So the answer to that is, if you want to reduce your risk of being sick from that egg, absolutely I would use soap and water to wash your hands, and then continue on with the egg, which is going to be ready to eat. Okay?
Another question.
Yeah.
If you're the guest at somebody's kitchen
and they're cooking eggs and they don't use that method.
Yeah.
Would you tell them, would you wash your hands or something after you,
That's tricky. You know what? Whenever you're eating at somebody else's house, or for that matter, whenever you're eating at a restaurant or a fast food, you're kind of taking your health into your own hands, right? I don't want to make you guys paranoid, right? But you are, because you don't know. Did anybody ever watch the series Seinfeld? Years ago, it came out in the 90s. There was actually an episode where Jerry, the main character, is eating out at a restaurant with his girlfriend, and the girlfriend's father is the chef, and Jerry and the dad are in the bathroom together, and the dad comes out of the stall and he walks into the kitchen, and Jerry realizes he was in the stall and he didn't wash his hands, and now he's in the kitchen making my dinner. And then they cut to this shot of this guy who didn't wash his hands kneading pizza dough with his hands. Just like that. And Jerry's watching like, oh my gosh. Well, then he refuses to eat the pizza. And the girlfriend and everyone's like, come on, eat the pizza. And Jerry's like, no, I'm not going to eat that pizza. And then it ends that everybody got horribly ill except Jerry, and the girlfriend broke up with him. And I was like, well, he didn't get sick. Right? Okay, that said, if it's family or somebody that you know, it might not be a bad idea to just say, hey, you know what, I'm older, I'm at risk, I would really appreciate it if you washed your hands. I mean, it's kind of hard to say that without, but protecting your health, and I think that when you're older, it's important, and people that care about you will understand, you know what, yeah, I want to protect your health. And so absolutely, I'm so sorry I did that, Restaurants, things like that, and depending on your relationship with the person making your eggs, that might be a little bit harder, but that's also advocating for your own health, and I think that's important. Yeah. Did you have a comment?
You're so right, because when you are in a restaurant, you don't know if they wash their hands while they're back there cooking
Yeah.
food.
You don't know. Right, you don't know what people are doing back in the kitchen. And that's true for any of us. I mean, fortunately you don't hear about foodborne illness outbreaks too often, but it does happen. And and sometimes with very deadly effects. I mean, a few years ago, there was a big outbreak. It was many years ago, I don't know if you guys remember, it was a Jack in the Box restaurant, and they had beef that was contaminated with the very dangerous strain of E. coli bacteria, and people died as a result because those burgers weren't cooked all the way through, right? And so you don't know. I mean, fortunately the odds are small, but they're still there.
Yeah, 'cause I got sick at an Outback restaurant.
At a what restaurant?
Outback.
Oh, an Outback. You got sick at an Outback restaurant. Yeah. You don't know what people are doing. You don't, I mean, you really hope that they're washing their hands before they go to the bathroom, after they go to the bathroom, or, but, and it's on the restaurant to make sure that they're doing that. But yeah, it can be risky. Did you have a comment?
I think one other option in terms of dealing with eggs might be to use plastic food handler gloves.
Yeah.
If you wear those and crack eggs and then take the gloves off, I think that's
You could do that. Yeah, you could use gloves if you want to. It's really up to you. It's just, remember, the entire goal is to keep the bacteria away from ready-to-eat foods as much as possible. That's the bottom line. Okay, good. Anybody else have any comments or questions or anything? No? Okay, good. All right. So Ted just walked out here, so I was going to do my food demo. Actually, I think what I will do, if you guys will excuse me for just a moment, I have my stuff in the refrigerator, right? So it's nice and safe. Actually, Ted, could you grab the bowl out of the refrigerator, please? Okay, good. He's going to do that. Okay, and we're going to do our quick cooking demo. But before I do any kind of cooking, what am I going to do? I'm going to wash my hands, right? Okay. So I'm going to, for those of you at home, I'm going to disappear off the camera for just a moment, and I'm going to wash my hands, and Ted is going to bring my ingredients in, and we will cook. All right, so pardon me for just a moment. Oh, goodness. Oh, I'm still on microphone here. Okay. Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me now. Okay, so I'm going to make something extremely fast here. All right, so I think we are, okay, so what I have, and you guys can see this, those of you in the studio, in the monitor there. Okay, what do I have in my bowl here? What does this look like?
Rice.
It's rice, yeah, it's just plain rice. In this case, it's brown rice, okay? Why do you guys think I have brown rice in here? It's got more fiber in it, right? It's got more fiber, it's got more B vitamins. I am not knocking white rice. If you like white rice, that's totally fine. But if you're okay using brown rice, you can get some additional nutrients from it that you're not necessarily going to get from white rice, okay? All right, so the reason I'm doing this recipe is, and we're going to talk a little bit more about whole grains later in the course, and why they're so good for you. But one of the things about saving money when you're in a smaller household is making sure that you're using all the food that you have, okay? So if you made rice or something and you have leftover rice and you put it aside, or any kind of grain, could be barley, could be quinoa, could be whatever, I'm just going to show you how to turn this into a quick meal, a healthy meal, okay? So I'm going to add some things. If you guys, I'm going to kind of keep it a mystery what I'm going to do with this here. But could you make a meal out of just rice? What would you put in it? What kind of things would you add to make this a healthy meal? What do you think? Eggs? Sure, you could put scrambled eggs in here. You could fry this up, right? Put some oil into a skillet or a wok, fry it up, put some eggs in there, right? What else could you put in here? Chicken, sure. What else? Peppers. You can put all kinds of vegetables in here, right? Yeah. One of the nice things about grains is it's a really good way to use up leftovers. So if you have a little bit of something in your refrigerator, you got some leftover chicken, you got some leftover vegetables, you've got some vegetables in your freezer, right? Take out a handful of peas or a handful of broccoli or whatever, saute them up in a pan, add them in here, maybe add some form of protein to it. That can be a good quick meal, right? And so you're using bits of everything, all right? All right, in this case, I am going to add some black beans. These are canned black beans. And a lot of times people will think that black beans are maybe not the best thing to add. Or not black beans, but just anything that's canned. And that's not necessarily true. One of the things that, that beans get sort of a bad rap for, or canned foods get a bad rap for, is the sodium content, right? These beans I actually rinsed before, after I opened the can, I rinsed them in a sieve. And when you rinse the beans, when you rinse any kind of canned vegetable, you lose most of the sugar, the salt content. Okay, so so these are really now low sodium beans just because I rinsed them off. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do, does anybody not like cilantro? Everybody's okay with cilantro? Okay, good. I'm actually going to add some cilantro to this. I'm going to throw this all in here. I've washed this, so it is safe. Okay? And then the last thing that I'm going to add is salsa. All right? I don't normally go for canned salsa quite as much, but and I don't get any kind of benefit from this. Rayleigh's has a really good canned salsa. I don't know what it is. It's like this fire roasted. I'll put it up here. I'm not giving a plug to Rayleigh's, but this is a really good canned salsa. But you can use any kind of salsa that you want. This is fire roasted salsa. And I'm just going to pour some in here. You could throw other stuff in here. If you've got a can of corn, you could throw it in there. If you've got avocados, you could throw it in there. You could do anything that you want with it. But this is, the result here is just a basic salad. And I'm going to have you guys give it a try and see what you think. How long did it take me to make this? 5 minutes, right? Yeah, just took a few minutes. Didn't take me that long to make it at all. And it's really fast. And this is something that I didn't make a huge amount of it. I'm going to pass this out. If you guys like it, great. If you don't like it and you don't want to eat it, that's totally fine. I don't force anybody to do anything they don't want to here. Okay. I think we have 6 of us here. Okay, I got to do one more. So I'm just going to pass some of these out. Oh, would you mind helping me? That would be perfect. Thank you. Okay. So something that I want to point out about this, what do you guys think? Oh, yeah. Okay. It's really basic, right? But it's good, it's tasty. This right here, a lot of times we tend not to think of a meal as a meal unless it has some form of protein in it, like meat. Because this dish has beans and rice in it, it's considered a complete protein, right? So it means that the protein that you're getting in this dish, because it has beans and rice, is equivalent to the amount of protein that you would be getting from beef or chicken or something like that, right? Do you think this is an expensive thing to make? No, it's really cheap, right? Yeah, you put some shrimp in there if you want to, right? This, a lot of the dishes that I'm going to be teaching you all today, for this session, are going to be dishes that are really good at using up whatever leftovers you have in your refrigerator. And that's a really good way to save money. And it's also a really good way to eat if you're just feeding yourself or a small household, right? Most people who are over age 60 live in small households of either just one or maybe another person, right? 1 or 2 people. There's not necessarily kids in the household. And so you just don't have as many mouths to feed. And that can be a problem too, right? sometimes if you have been, particularly for women, if you've been in the habit of feeding multiple mouths throughout your life, and all of a sudden you're at a point where you just kind of have to feed you, or maybe yourself and one other person, you may be used to be making these big, huge, portions of food, but you don't have to do that anymore. And if you're making much more than you need, you're going to end up with a lot more leftovers. And if you have a lot more leftovers, odds are you're probably going to be throwing some of that food away, right? Because you may get really tired of eating, chicken cacciatore after 7 days, even though it's good for 7 days. Like, do I want to eat this for 7 days? Right? So you have to start thinking about making less, right? Or using up leftovers to make something new. This is one of the reasons why I really like the eatfresh.org site, because if you have some leftover rice, you can just go in there and put in rice, and it'll pull a bunch of recipes up for you, right? Instead of cooking full recipes, sometimes just cooking recipe components can make more sense if you have a small household. And what I mean by that is, instead of making a specific chicken recipe, just cook up a few pieces of chicken that you can use for different things, right? So if you're going to cook up, say, 3 chicken breasts, maybe you're going to have like a chicken burrito one day, maybe you're going to have a salad with chicken in it the next day, maybe you're going to have a chicken with rice or pasta and some sort of sauce, like a curry sauce or a tomato sauce or something like that, so that you're still using. So the point is that you have chicken in there, but you're going to use it in different ways. Does that make sense? Rather than making a big dish and having to eat the same thing over and over and over again. You have to think a little bit differently when you're just cooking for one person. You have to shop differently too. All right? Let's talk about the freezer. When you have a small household, the freezer is a really good tool. Okay? Whenever you freeze food, it prevents bacteria from growing on it. All right? We already talked about that as being important if you're trying to keep yourself safe from food poisoning. But it can also make it really easy to prepare meals ahead of time and then pull them out for just one portion, all right? One of the things that freezes really well is soup. If you make a soup recipe, and even I struggle with this, I cannot make 4 servings of soup. I end up with 27 servings of soup, because if you've ever tried to make soup, sometimes it's just like, oh, I'll add this, I'll add that, I'll add this. And the next thing you know, you've got 15 gallons of soup. It takes a little bit of practice to kind of whittle that down if you're like me. But there are 2 types of foods that are really good about using up extra, just leftover foods in your refrigerator: soups and salads. All right. If you're making soup is really hard to mess up, but you can also put whatever you want into it, right? So if you have leftover chicken, if you have leftover beans or rice or pasta, or you got a lonely carrot rolling around in your vegetable drawer, right? You can use those things up rather than throw them away by putting them into soup, all right? And I can refer you to, actually I think I am going to be making a soup for one of our recipes as we go through this. But and you'll see how easy it is to do that. But you can freeze portions of food, generally for up to 6 months, and pull them out and have meals. So rather than throwing food away before you hit that 7-day mark, if it's something that you can freeze it. All right. There are some foods that don't freeze real well, right? These are usually things like high water content vegetables. Like, I wouldn't freeze lettuce or cucumbers or melon or something that has a lot of water in it. But if it's a solid vegetable or a solid fruit, generally it will freeze really well. Something that has like mayonnaise or some sort of a fatty dressing or component generally does not freeze real well. So like tuna salad or, pasta salad that has dressing on it, I wouldn't freeze those things. Sometimes you can freeze them without the fatty part on it, right? So without the oil or the mayonnaise or the things like that, and then you can add it later if you want to. If you're in a small household, frozen and canned foods are your best friend. The reason for that is that they just have a much longer shelf life, right? Have any of you had the experience where especially this time of year when like berries and things are coming, you go out to the store and you see like these gorgeous strawberries, and you're like, oh, I want some strawberries. And you buy yourself a basket of strawberries and you bring it home and it looks beautiful for the first day and maybe you eat some, right? And then the next day you're busy and you didn't eat any and you come back the third day. What do those strawberries look like? Right. Last week I made a smoothie and I told you that if you have those strawberries that look like that, they don't have mold on them, but maybe they don't look as pretty as they did in the store. A smoothie is a real good way to you can use those up because they're still good. They may not look pretty, but they're still good as long as they don't have mold on them. But the other thing that you can do is use your freezer for them, okay? Fresh fruits and vegetables are things that are okay. They're fine to eat when you're in a small household, but you have to be really careful of how much you buy, right? So you have to ask yourself, how long is this going to last, and maybe not buy more than is going to, strawberries last like a day, maybe two, right? So things like berries and a lot of more solid fruits, things like peaches and nectarines and bananas and things like that, those actually could freeze pretty well. But what I would recommend is cut them into chunks first, take the skin off, definitely take the skin off the banana. Peaches and nectarines and those kind of things, you can leave the skin on or not. Cut them into chunks, put them on a cookie tray, put them in your refrigerator and let them freeze solid, and then take the chunks and put them into a baggie if you're going to save those, okay? If you took a bunch of strawberries and like fresh strawberries and you put them in a baggie and you freeze it, what's going to happen when you try to take your berries out? And you're going to have like one big mega chunk of, frozen up strawberry, and you're going to have to get your knife in there and do that, and then you risk stabbing yourself, which is not good because we don't want anybody to go to the hospital. If you individually freeze them on a tray without them touching and then put them into a baggie, you can pull them out individually because they won't stick together. Okay? So that works really well with solid, any kind of solid fruit or vegetable. So things like you can take corn off the cob, you can freeze pea pods, you can freeze green beans, you can freeze broccoli florets, things like that. So if you have anything that you bought, when you're purchasing foods, you want to be kind of mindful of, when you're purchasing fresh fruits and vegetables, I need to make sure that I buy enough of this that I'm actually going to eat. And if I can't eat it, if I bought the strawberries because they're beautiful, I'm not saying don't buy strawberries, but you better plan to use all those strawberries or freeze them. Otherwise, you're going to be throwing strawberries in the garbage can. And that's literally, you might as well throw a couple of dollars of the garbage, right? So you have to kind of be mindful of that, okay? Frozen and canned produce can be really good because they have longer shelf lives, as I said. So if you're trying to decide, do I want to buy fresh strawberries or frozen strawberries? You think about, frozen strawberries, I can just pull a handful out whenever I want to. I could put it in a smoothie, I could put it on my cereal, I could put, I can put it on my oatmeal or whatever I want, and those strawberries in my freezer are probably going to be good for about 6 months, whereas the strawberries in the refrigerator are going to be good for like 3 days, maybe. So how many of you, when you go grocery shopping, how many of you plan your grocery trip? Or you just go in there, you're like, I need that, and I need that, and I need that?
Sometimes you plan what you're gonna get, but then once you get inside the store, it's a different story.
It's a different story, yeah, it is. When you have a small household, and you're trying to save money, planning what you're gonna buy really helps you save money. Okay? Many of us, you know, and you may have heard that one of the worst times to go into the grocery store is when you're hungry. That's really true, because if you're hungry, you're more likely to buy all the stuff that you shouldn't be buying, right? Because you're hungry. You're just like, oh, those cookies look really good, right? And I'm not saying don't buy cookies, but you know, you want to make sure that you're buying other, you know, stuff that you actually need as well, especially if money is tight. So one of the best things that you can do is to plan what your food week is going to look like. I don't mean you have to sit down and write an extensive menu, but it might not be a bad idea. And the eatfresh.org site is something that can help with this, is to write down what you're going to eat for your dinner. What are typical dinners for you? Eatfresh.org will help you find healthier meals, right? Meals that include lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and all those things that we know are good for you, right? Most of us, when we cook and when we eat, we tend to fall into habits. We tend to eat kind of the same things. If you think about what you eat every day, you probably tend to eat kind of the same things regularly, right? So it might be, you know, okay, I eat a sandwich every day, or I open up a can of soup, or I have oatmeal for breakfast every morning, or whatever the case is. We don't eat exactly the same thing, but we tend to eat the same kinds of things. Well, those habits follow us into the grocery store, right? So we tend to gravitate towards certain things in the grocery. Like if I'm in the cereal aisle, that's the box that I grab. It's got those colors on it. I don't look at anything else. But that's it. That's the one that I grab. And we don't necessarily think about anything else, right? So when you're planning for a smaller household and to save money, you have to ask yourself a few questions, right? Am I going to use all of that? Is there a better product for me? Well, we're going to continue talking about this as we go through this class. We're going to talk about food labels, and we're going to talk about, you know, all kinds of things that will kind of help you evaluate what you're actually buying and what you're making for yourself. And ask yourself, is this the best thing for me, or should I maybe be looking for something else, right? But I just want you to be aware that most of us, what we eat and how we shop is ingrained in us. That is habit, right? So we have to kind of ask ourselves, are these habits worth breaking? Can I save more money if I don't buy that box every time? There's maybe another box that might be a little healthier, a little cheaper for me, right? That I'm not going to waste. You know, those are questions to ask. Okay, and we'll continue that as we go on through. So, did you have a question?
Sometimes when you go in the grocery store, you look at the stuff that you go in there to buy,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you overbuy because they don't have like 3 for $5 or,
Yeah,
you know, but then you're not really thinking that you're not gonna eat all that stuff and just
right.
buy it because it's on sale.
That's an excellent point. So for those of you at home, what she just brought up was you go in the grocery store sometimes and there's a good sale on, and so you decide that you want to buy more of that. You know, and the thing that they don't really tell you is that if there's, you know, 3 for $9, they're still $3 each. Right? So you're still getting the money off even if you just buy one. But yeah, if you buy 3 of whatever that is, but you know you're not going to use all of that before they start expiring, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it to me to do that, right? Well, that's marketing, right? They're trying to 3 for $9. Ooh, that's a good price. I'm going to buy a bunch of that. Well, it's not a bargain if you end up throwing half of it away. So this is part of why planning what you're going to eat. You know, on the weekend is a good time to do it. Just kind of sit down, what do I want to eat this week, right? And then plan to buy for that. You know, I only need this much. I don't need strawberries this week, right? I don't need this or that, but this is actually what I need. And if you buy what you need and you use everything that you're buying, that's the best situation, right? Because you're not wasting your money. And sometimes with grocery stores, what you can do is you can actually see what's on sale and plan your meals around that, right? They have, at most grocery stores, they have those little newspaper kind of handouts. You know, it's usually at the front door when you walk in, and you can pick that up and look at it. Oh, in fact, you have one right there. Yeah, and you can see what's on sale. But nowadays, if you have access to the internet, you can actually just go to the store site and say, you know, what's on sale at Food for Less this week, and it will tell you, you know, ground beef is on sale, artichokes are on sale, apples are on sale, green beans are on sale, oatmeal's on sale, whatever. And you can kind of plan what you're going to eat. So the weekend is kind of a good time to do that. Just sit down and go, okay, what's on sale this week? How much do I need, right? Maybe I don't need all of it. I don't need 15 pounds of it. It's just me. So, and you can figure out how much you need. And then what you can do is you can figure, and actually, if it's something that is a really good deal, like let's just say it's pork, right? It's a good deal on pork chops or whatever. If you wanted to buy extra, that is when you bring your freezer in, right? It's a good idea to date things that you put in your freezer, because after about 6 months, you want to use it up. So if you have things in your freezer and you're planning meals, look at what's in your freezer. Oh, I got pork chops. I got a month before I got to use these up. I better get those used, right? So it's active management of your kitchen and your food supply. It takes practice to do it. It really does. And if you're not in practice of planning your meals and just kind of knowing what you have on hand before you buy stuff, it's going to take some practice to do it. But the best place to start is by planning what you're going to eat for the week, right? And again, it doesn't have to be anything big and complicated. It could just be, okay, I'm going to have spaghetti and you know, maybe I'm going to do the spaghetti with ground beef, so I'm going to use, you know, half of the ground beef for that. And then what am I going to do with the rest of it? Well, I'm either going to freeze it or I'm going to make something else with it. And you're kind of actively planning how you're going to use that food up, right? And then when you're planning, you're going to look and see what you have left. What do I have in my freezer? What do I have in my cabinets? Oh, I got some cans of beans up there. What can I do with beans? I'll go to eatfresh.org and I'll go kidney beans. What can I do with that, right? If you do that, you will probably find that you use less money when you're shopping. And if you focus on yourself, or however many people are in your household, you know, how many people do I have to feed here? You're probably going to find that you're going to buy less and you're going to use your food more efficiently. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I find myself overbuying,
Yeah.
because sometimes when you go to the store, and while you're in the store shopping, they make those announcements, what they have on sale.
Yeah.
And Safeway is a place that, when I go there, they always have like four packs of meats for $20.
Mm-hmm.
So you go back there and you look what kind of meat they have, but you're not thinking about when you're going to fix this.
Right.
You're just buying it because it's on sale.
Yeah. So your point is about overbuying without really thinking about what you're going to do with it. That's kind of the American way. Most Americans are kind of like, ooh, that's a good sale. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but that's a good price. So I'm right there buying up, 15 pounds of pork or whatever. So what you want to do, if you get in, well, actually it was you that said you could look at eatfresh.org on your phone. Is it an app or are you looking at the website?
On the website.
You're looking at the website. Yeah.
And it gives me the recipe.
Oh, yeah.
30 minutes for cooking. And so
Perfect.
This one on the phone.
Yeah. I don't know, honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know if they have an app. I probably should find that out, but you can at least pull it up on your phone.
Yes.
Okay, so what I would say to you is if you're in Safeway and you hear the announcement, 4 packs of meat for, Before you go rushing back there, you need to stop. And you need to think, what am I going to do with all of this meat, right? Now, you may have the freezer space for it. And if that works for you, then that's totally fine. But you have to have a plan. I would say, yeah,
Throwing away a lot of stuff,
yeah,
yeah.
okay,
With my job,
mhm,
I'm barely ever at home.
yeah,
And I really don't have a lot of time to cook,
mhm,
and so it's just,
yeah. And that, and what you have just described, like I said, is ingrained in many people's heads. Oh, let's save money, but you're not actually saving money if you're throwing half of it out. And so what we're talking about here is doing kind of a behavioral change to where you're kind of stopping yourself before you go, oh, I'm going to go buy all this stuff, to thinking, what am I going to do with it, right? If you're somebody who's still working and you don't have a lot of time, quick and easy recipes are really going to be good for you. So something like, so you just kind of have to stop and ask how much is going to, so maybe instead of buying 4, if there's still a good deal on one, like they're saying, you can get 4 of these for $20, but if you ask them, if you buy one, is it still 5? Or am I paying full price? That's worth asking, because sometimes you still get the discount if you're buying a single unit. They don't tell you that because they want you to spend $20, right?
sometimes you find a single pack cheaper than.
Absolutely right. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We're going to talk about unit price. We're going to talk about grocery shopping and really kind of going even deeper on this topic. About unit price and what that means and how you can use it to save money and those kind of things, right? So what I'm saying is that before you buy anything, have a plan for it, right? So if you're going to buy, let's say let's just say you're going to buy a bunch of broccoli. Broccoli is a good price right now. What am I going to do with all this broccoli? Maybe I'm going to have a broccoli salad this day. Maybe I'm going to put it in a stir fry this day. Maybe I'm going to do that, right? So I would say don't buy anything unless you have a plan to use it. All right? And that's a huge shift for most of us. Because what most of us do is we go in the grocery store and we buy that box and this can and that bottle and this thing because we're used to it. And that's just what we do. Our brains are trained, right, to do those things. And then we come home, and it's like, well, I bought all the stuff that I normally buy, but I don't know what to do with it now because I'm working late and I'm not cooking, right? Or I don't want this. I'm tired of eating this, but I bought it because I always buy it, right? So sometimes going outside of those habits and looking at what else is out there, maybe there are better things for you. We're going to continue in this vein over and over and over again for the rest through the rest of the sessions. I'm going to continue on this thread just to try to get you guys to think a little bit differently. Yeah, did you have a comment?
I watched a program on television. This doctor said, don't ever eat cereal, breakfast cereal again, or never eat a hot dog. I haven't eaten a hot dog since. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, certain foods, hot dogs are cured meats. I mean, you could really say the same thing for any kind of like lunch meat and things like that tend to be high in sodium. I wouldn't, if you like hot dogs, I wouldn't say never eat them again, but because, the thing with diet is the things that hurt us more are patterns than anything else. So if you have a regular pattern of eating cured meats, or salty meats, so things like, hot dogs and bacon and bologna and those kind of things, if those are regular parts of your diet and that's a pattern, you're much more likely to end up with, things like high blood pressure from the sodium and, and some research indicates that those are linked to higher rate of cancer and those sorts of things. Saturated fat, heart disease, that sort of stuff, if it's a regular part of your diet. But if you don't normally eat hot dogs and you would like to have a hot dog and you have a hot dog, it doesn't mean you're going to die because you ate that hot dog. It just means how frequently are you eating those types of foods. Now, if you're never eating a hot dog again, great. That's not going to hurt you.
What about cereal?
Well, cereal, it depends on the type of cereal, right? We're going to talk more about whole grains, like I gave you guys brown rice today. If the cereal that you're eating is providing something useful to your diet, like whole grains, then I would argue that that's a good choice. But if you're eating, Cocoa Puffs and that's all you're eating, you're probably not getting much nutrition from that, right? So, but you are getting lots of added sugar and those sorts of things. So it just depends on the type, right? I'm usually not a fan of anything that says, don't ever eat this again. Because the thing is that in a healthy diet, you can eat anything that you want. It's just a matter of how often you eat it, right? So I don't like absolutes. I mean, if you really like Cocoa Puffs and you eat them every once in a while, or you like a hot dog and you eat it every once in a while, it's fine. You can be perfectly healthy and do that. They're just not everyday foods. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. What did you guys think of this? It was very quick and easy, very basic. I forgot to bring avocado. Normally I put avocado in this, but it's really good. Can of corn. What other kind of things would you guys put in this? Does anybody want any more? No? Okay. That's fine. There's all kinds of things that you could put into this. And it's just an example of, like I said, this is going to be the first of several recipes where I am making things that it's easy to throw leftovers into, okay? When you use your leftovers, you are less likely to throw stuff away, all right? So anything that I make over these next couple of weeks, I want you to think about, what can I put in that? What might I have that I've thrown away that I might be able to throw in there and use? And that's going to be sort of a thread that we return to over and over again. Okay? Because we're trying to change your habits a little bit. All right. Excellent. Anybody have any other comments? No? Okay. So I will bring extra books next week. Again, I apologize for not having those today. As I mentioned last week, there's a lot of other really good information in these booklets that I don't necessarily go over in class because I don't have time to go through all of them, but there's a lot of really good information, so I would encourage you to read through. There's a section in this book that we skip, and it's called Feeding Your Family. This curriculum we use for all age groups, including families with children. I skipped that one just because we're serving people who are over 60. However, there are people who are over 60 who do have children at home. They might be raising grandchildren. So if you have children or you're feeding children, I invite you to go back and just read through that section. There's a lot of really good information, but it's just not something that we're going to cover in here. Okay? All right. Okay, well, if nobody has any questions, then we are, oh, you have one more?
I have one other question.
One other question.
My blood pressure went up, and I'm trying to control it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have these friends who eat Chinese food 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking about not eating any more rice or the noodles. Does that make sense?
With Chinese food, generally it's the sauces that are, so I mean, the noodles and the rice and vegetables, those are all great. But with Chinese food and actually a lot of different types of Asian dishes, a lot of times it's just the salt, the sauces that are where the salt is. Are these things you're making yourself, or are you getting them from somewhere?
In a restaurant.
Oh, they're in a restaurant. Okay. So, how do you feel about cooking?
I'm thinking about limiting the rice and the noodles and just trying to get some vegetables, but I'm wondering if I'm asking you.
Well, is this a restaurant that you enjoy going to? Is this a restaurant you enjoy going to?
Yeah.
Yeah. What I would do is ask them if maybe they can put the sauce on the side. And see the sauce on the side, or maybe they have like a lower sodium soy sauce or something.
Rice is okay and noodles okay?
Yeah, those are fine. Rice and noodles are fine. It's usually the sauce.
Okay.
With most Asian foods, it's usually the sauce.
Okay.
Because soy sauce is extremely high in sodium. Fish sauce, a lot of these other sauces have a lot of salt in them. But you can look for lower sodium versions. So you can get low sodium soy sauce still has a good amount of sodium in it. So you don't want to go super crazy with it, but
That's the main thing.
it's usually the
Everything else,
sauce.
okay.
Yeah. And if there are things that don't have sauce on them, those might be good choices as well. So if you get, noodles and rice might have a little sauce. What I would do is ask and just say, hey, I'm wondering about what you put sauces on, what you don't have put sauces on. And, hopefully they're happy to tell you that. Yeah. A lot of times I'll do stir fries at home. And it's not really a stir fry because, for a true stir fry, you have to have like crazy hot, fire heat. And I don't have that at my house because so I'm really kind of doing a saute. But usually what I do is I do, ginger, scallions, garlic, and low sodium soy sauce, and some toasted sesame oil, and that's a lot lower in sodium. And I'll saute vegetables and put it over noodles or rice or things like that. It's not authentic necessarily, but it's good and it's much lower in sodium.
So it's the sodium you want to eliminate,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, you really want to cut back on that. If you have high blood pressure, sodium is really what you need to watch out for. We're going to talk about food labels. We're going to talk about what to look for on food labels for lower sodium when we get to that. Okay? Oh, hi, Emily. Oh, Emily, you don't have a booklet. Okay, so what I will do is I will get in touch with Brittany, who's our person who handles that. And she will get one out to you. I'm assuming we have your address. Do we have Emily's address? You don't know. Okay. Is there a way to communicate with her to get her address? We should. Did you sign up for the class, Emily? Because if you did, we should have your address.
Yes, I signed up.
Oh. Did she sign up for the class?
Yes, I did sign up for the class.
Oh, you did sign up for the class. Did you give us did you give us like an email?
I did.
Okay. So what I will do is if we have your email, then I will put that through to Brittany and she will get you a book, okay?
Thank you.
All right, no problem. Margaret, did you get a book? You can type into the chat if you want. If you don't want to talk, that's fine. I just want to make sure that you have a book. Okay. All right. Okay, does anybody have any other questions?
Oh.
One more.
I just wanted to mention, when I go to a Chinese restaurant,
Mhm.
because I gotta watch my blood pressure too.
Yeah.
I tell them, easy on the sodium and no MSG. 'Cause, that's what makes the food taste good.
Yeah, MSG is, the S in MSG is sodium. That's what it stands for. It's monosodium glutamate. So so that's going to be pretty high in sodium too. It's worth asking. It's just, every restaurant's probably going to approach that differently. But just always remember it's generally the sauce that's going to be.
No salt, no MSG.
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
And then it still be salty because they use the soy sauce and the oyster sauce. So
Oyster sauce, any kind of Asian sauce generally has
not the
lots of.
MSG.
Yeah.
That's
It's worth a shot to ask, okay?
Okay, I'm not good rice and noodles, that's good.
No, totally. Those should be fine. It's just that sauce. All right, good. Any other comments or questions or anything? No? Okay. All right, I will see you all 10 o'clock next week, same time. Those of you who are joining us virtually, you are always welcome to come in here. It's okay if you don't. And those of you, who are here, if for some reason you can't come next week and you want to join us virtually, that's fine as well. But I like seeing your faces, so, and you don't get to eat if you're not in here, so. All right, very good. All right, everybody, have a wonderful week. Take care. Good questions this week, guys.